Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa Parivajaka Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajaka Acharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. On this 15th day of February 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 2 entitled Contents of the Gita Summarized. Text number 17, I've been told. Okay. Avinashi tu tadvidhi yena sarvam idam tatam vinasham abhyasyasya nakaschit kartamarhati. Avinashi tu tadvidhi yena sarvamidam tatam vinasham abhyasyasya nakaschit kartamarhati. Avinashi tu tadvidhi yena sarvamidam tatam vinasham abhyasyasya nakaschit kartamarhati. Avinashi tu tadvidhi yena sarvamidam tatam vinasham abhyasyasya nakaschit kartamarhati. Avinashi tu tadvidhi yena sarvamidam tatam vinasham abhyasyasya na kashchit kartumarhati. Govardhan. Avinashitu tadvidhi yena sarvamidam tatam vinasham abhyasyasya kashchit kartumarhati. Avinashitu tadvidhi yena sarvamidam tatam vinasham abhyasyasya na kashchit kartumarhati. Avinashitu tadvidhi yena sarvamidam tatam vinasham abhyasyasya na kashchit kartumarhati. Avinashitu tadvidhi yena sarvamidam tatam vinasham abhyasyasya na kashchit kartumarhati. Avinashitu tadvidhi yena sarvamidam tatam vinasham abhyasyasya na kashchit kartumarhati. Zoomland. Avinashi, imperishable. 2, but. Tat, that. Vidhi, know it. Yena, by whom. Sarvam, all of the body. Idam, this. Tatam, pervaded. Vinasham, destruction. Abhyayasya, of the imperishable. Asya, of it. Nakaschit, no one. Kartum, to do. Arhati, is able. Go ahead. Turn this down just a bit. Okay. Translation. That which pervades the entire body, you should know to be indestructible. No one is able to destroy that imperishable soul. Purport. This verse more clearly explains the real nature of the soul, which is spread all over the body. Anyone can understand what is spread all over the body. It is consciousness. Everyone is conscious of the pains and pleasures of the body in part or as a whole. This spreading of consciousness is limited within one's own body. The pains and pleasures of one body are unknown to another. Therefore, each and every body is the embodiment of an individual soul, and the symptom of the soul's presence is perceived as individual consciousness. This soul is described as 1/10,000th part of the upper portion of the hair point in size. The Shveta Ashvatar Upanishad 5.9 confirms this. I'll say, you say? Balagra shatabhagasya shatada kalpitasya cha bhago jiva savigyeya sachanantyaya kalpite. When the upper point of a hair is divided into 100 parts, and again each of such parts is further divided into 100 parts, each such part is the measurement of the dimension of the spirit soul. Similarly, the same version is stated, Keshagra shatabhagasya shatangsha sadrishatmakaha jiva sukshma swarupoyam sankyatito hichitkanaha. There are innumerable particles of spiritual atoms, which are measured as 1/10,000th of the upper portion of the hair. Therefore, the individual particle of spirit soul is a spiritual atom smaller than the material atoms, and such atoms are innumerable. This very small spiritual spark is the basic principle of the material body, and the influence of such a spiritual spark is spread all over the body as the influence of the active principle of some medicine spreads throughout the body. This current of the spirit soul is felt all over the body as consciousness, and that is the proof of the presence of the soul. Any layman can understand that the material body minus consciousness is a dead body, and this consciousness cannot be revived in the body by any means of material administration. Therefore, consciousness is not due to any amount of material combination, but to the spirit soul. In the Mundaka Upanishad 319, the measurement of the atomic spirit soul is further explained. Esho niratma chetasa veditavyo yasmin prana panchada sambivesha pranaishchittam sarvamotam prajanam yasmin vishuddhe vibhavatyesha atma. The soul is atomic in size and can be perceived by perfect intelligence. This atomic soul is floating in the 5 kinds of air, prana, apana, vyana, samana, and udana. Is situated within the heart and spreads its influence all over the body of the embodied living entities. When the soul is purified from contamination of the 5 kinds of material air, its spiritual influence is exhibited. The Hatha Yoga system is meant for controlling the 5 kinds of air encircling the pure soul by different kinds of sitting postures, not for any material profit, but for liberation of the minute soul from the entanglement of the material atmosphere. So the constitution of the atomic soul is admitted in all Vedic literatures, and it is also actually felt in the practical experience of any sane man. Only the insane man can think of this atomic soul as all-pervading Vishnu Tattva. The influence of the atomic soul can be spread all over a particular body. According to the Mundaka Upanishad, this atomic soul is situated in the heart of every living entity, and because the measurement of the atomic soul is beyond the power of appreciation of the material scientists, some of them assert foolishly that there is no soul. The individual atomic soul is definitely there in the heart, along with the supersoul, and thus all the energies of bodily movement are emanating from this part of the body. The corpuscles, which carry the oxygen from the lungs, gather energy from the soul. When the soul passes away from this position, the activity of the blood, generating fusion, ceases. Medical science accepts the importance of the red corpuscles, but it cannot ascertain that the source of the energy is the soul. Medical science, however, does admit that the heart is the seat of all energies of the body. Such atomic particles of the spirit soul are compared to the sunshine molecules. In the sunshine there are innumerable radiant molecules. Similarly, the fragmental parts of the Supreme Lord are atomic sparks of the rays of the Supreme Lord, called by the name Prabha, or superior energy. So whether one follows Vedic knowledge or modern science, one cannot deny the existence of the spirit soul in the body, and the science of the soul is explicitly described in the Bhagavad Gita by the personality of Godhead himself. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara. So, getting a little cold. So Krishna is further describing the soul, and he starts out with Avinashi, cannot be destroyed. And he will continue that with several verses describing that. This word avyaya, which is avyayasya in the form of avyayasya, imperishable, this is the most repeated word in the Bhagavad Gita. You'll find it at least 15, 20 times throughout the Gita, describing both the soul and the Supreme Soul, Krishna, as well as, I think, the Supreme Spiritual World abode. So, this concept, or this understanding of the infinitesimal size of the soul and its influence in the body, this is, Prabhupada explained that each of us is kind of a mini-universe. We each have our little mini-universe in which we are trying to be the Supreme Controller. But since we're not Krishna, unlike he can actually control, he's all-pervasive. He's situated in Goloka Vrindavan. Goloka eva nivasatya kilatma bhuta. It's in the Brahma Samhita. He's there in Goloka Vrindavan enjoying, but at the same time he's present in everyone's heart as the Super Soul and in all the atoms. So we can't actually control this body, though we try to. There's so many things that we have no idea what's going on, but somehow it's happening. And it's all happening because of the presence of the soul is there. As soon as the soul leaves, the body's dead. Or more precisely, when the body machine becomes unworkable, as it does eventually for one reason or another, injury, disease, or just old age, the soul wants to leave. It's untenable anymore. It's just not possible to live anymore in this particular body. So you leave along, carried by the subtle body, the mind, the intelligence, and ego. And then, according to your activities and your karma and your consciousness you've developed, you get another body, hopefully human, to continue again the struggle for existence. So this is an unnatural position for the soul. That will become very clear. This whole material energy is a device or an arrangement that Krishna's made to reform the souls, us, because we have rebelled against the natural order of things, which is to be servants of Krishna. And in this way to enjoy, not to try to enjoy separately. And trying to enjoy separately is a suicidal proposition for the soul, because we cut ourselves off from the real energy and the source of real enjoyment. And so we try to mimic the Lord's activities. And we fail because we're minute, we're very helpless. The material energy is so powerful. Daiviyesha gunamayi, mama maya dorottaya, Krishna says, 7th chapter, 14th verse, very important verse. That this energy is divine, material energy. Normally we say, okay, so we have the material energy and the spiritual energy. Spiritual energy is divine, and the material energy is material. But ultimately it's all divine, because it's connected to Krishna. It's his energy. Everything. We are also his energy. So why is it, as Sanatana Goswami so sagely asked, why is it that I'm suffering? Who am I and why am I suffering? That's what this first chapter is all about. In fact, a lot of the Gita is about that. We are pure spirit in a unnatural situation of being encased in matter, and we're animating this particular body, and we've had many before, and we'll have future bodies. Even in this one body, we go through so many changes. That was 213. So the whole idea, when you think of the context, Krishna is training Arjuna to think of the living beings as spirit souls, not in terms of their body. Because as soon as you think in terms of their body, he's thinking of his own bodily relationship to them. And that's the basis of Maya, of illusion. Because that relationship is very ephemeral, means it's very, very temporary. Prabhupada compares it in the second canto, right in the beginning, I think, in the first chapter, to the way in which bubbles come together, foam bubbles come together in the ocean waves. You know, how long does it last? They come together, last for a few seconds, and then they're separated. So our relationships, material relationships in this world are like that. And we place so much importance on them. But ultimately we're disappointed because they come to an end, they transform, they turn into just the opposite. You know, what did we hear? Was it this morning when Vijay was explaining how somebody, his wife or his girlfriend had an affair or something, and he killed the guy? You know, twice. I think we mentioned it twice. It happens all the time. So what happened? In other words, you were enjoying. There was hope. There was, you know, you were in seventh heaven, and then it turns into the opposite: nightmare, pain, unbearable pain. This is material life. The body itself is such a fragile instrument. And one thing goes wrong, you know, and everything changes, you know. I visited Madhusudan Prabhu, you know, he was out of the hospital. I think he's recuperating, you know, but he's out of the hospital, but not out of the woods, you know. His disease is still serious, you know. And he was just saying how, you know, everything changed when you're suddenly confronted with your own mortality and you realize this is coming to an end. And we live in this dream world like we'll live forever. That's the most amazing thing. So here, Krishna's giving us the absolute truth. We have to have faith in that. That yena sarvam idam tatam. And I remember when I first read this and said, yeah, that's actually true. You know, how do we live? We live by being conscious of what's going on in the body. You stub your toe. Oh, you know, as is pointed out, how much pleasure can you get out of the toe? You know, if it's working right, then you don't have to think about it, right? You just walk and everything works. So basically, it's either neutral or a source of pain. You know, in other words, everything that's going on in the body, you just take it for granted. The complete illusion, but you take it for granted. You know, the circulation's going on, the breathing is going on. Now it's become problematic. People are aware of it. You know, it doesn't always happen. But when there's trouble, then you become acutely aware of it. So really, the material body and the whole material situation is basically a trick of Maya. But the essential quality of it is suffering. That's what this world is made of. And what does Krishna say? You know the phrase, Dukkhalayam Ashashvatam, in the 8th chapter. Dukkhalayam means the abode of suffering. And it's temporary. Even if you say, okay, I understand it's suffering, I'll tolerate it. No, that's not, you can't tolerate it either. In other words, you're going to have to leave the whole situation and go to a new situation. That not knowing the future, knowing what's going to happen, is part of the suffering. Now there's this situation in Europe, I'm sure you're aware of it, Ukraine and Russia and the United States, you know. And I grew up with this. It's Cold War. Facing off, you know, hydrogen bombs. I remember, did you ever see those pictures? They blew up a 50 megaton bomb once and took pictures of it. Huge explosion, you know, big as an island, you know. The Russians took the pictures. It's all propaganda to scare you, to deter. This whole thing is deterrence. Mutually assured destruction. What's the acronym? MAD. Mutually assured destruction. So it's mad. The whole enterprise of trying to enjoy this body, forming into nations, the war, the nationalism, all of that is part of the great delusion of the spirit soul. So Krishna conscious philosophy, and Krishna speaking here, this essence of the whole Vedic philosophy, is so important because he can wake you up to the reality. Now you may not be able to live it right away or understand it or realize the truth of it, but at least if you understand, if you know the facts and you start molding your life according to that, then gradually Krishna from within, he'll enlighten you. You'll get more and more realization. From Gyan to Vigyan. Gyan is understanding. Okay, I understand what this verse means, and I believe it, but I haven't really experienced it. When you really experience yourself as a pure spirit and not matter, and the proof is, I was just reading this today. The proof is that you're able, where we learned in the previous verse, no, the 15. Remember that? Best among men, Arjuna, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is certainly eligible for liberation. So when we're able to maintain that perspective of the temporality of material world, the fact that our real interest is in spirit, in understanding Krishna and relationship with Krishna, then the vicissitudes, the changes and the ups and downs of this world, will not disturb us mentally. But for someone who's completely on the bodily platform, just the prospect of change is anxiety producing. The anxiety is a greater part of the misery. You know what I'm saying? The impending loss of a job, or the impending loss of a relationship, or the possible disease, or a million different things can go wrong. So that anxiety is part of what it means to be in the material world. So when you say, oh, it's all in the hands of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare, you know, and whatever happened, you see it as Krishna's mercy. He's giving you a test to overcome, or he's giving you something nice, you can serve him better, but you're simply being Krishna conscious. The outside world, including your personal situation, is in the hands of the Lord. So that gives you a tremendous amount of peace. The peace that will come up in this chapter, very much near the end. How do we actually get peace? And it's all summed up in one verse, right near the end. Vihaya kama niksarvan bhumam charadi nikspaha nirmamo narahankara sashandim adigachati. Vihaya kaman, here's this word kama again, lust, it always comes up. By rejecting all of these personal desires means I'm going to enjoy separately. Vihaya kama san puman charadi nikspaha, living free of these kind of desires. Nikspaha nirmamo narahankara. Nothing is mine. I'm simply it's in my care for the service of Krishna, or for my basic maintenance, so that I can maintain my body. But I'm not going to try to own more and more of this world, because that's this illusion, and it's a thievery. Nirmamo narahankara, and no false ego, thinking that I am the body, but I am simply a spirit soul servant of Krishna. Sashanti madagachati, such a soul becomes peaceful. So it's not easy to have that mentality, because it goes directly against the material mentality. This is my I and mine, which is the essence of the false ego. Ahankara, what does it mean? I'm the doer. Ahankara. I'm the doer, therefore I should be the owner, and I should get credit for doing all this. This is all the accretions of the false ego around itself. So beginning with understanding that we're pure spirit and consciousness, part of the supreme consciousness, but eternally part, and that we're temporarily occupying this body, but that will come to an end. So if I can develop my Krishna consciousness between now and when I leave this body, then I'm sure to go back to Godhead or take a big step back to Godhead. In other words, you're on the right path. And that's the most auspicious thing we can do. Okay, any questions on text 17? Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu, for constantly enlightening us.
Hare Krishna, glory to Prabhupada.
Can you please elaborate a little bit on this 5 kinds of air? Pran, Apan, Vyan, Saman, and Udan?
I never, Prabhupada doesn't really explain it there. There may be some more in the Bhagavatam in certain parts, but I forget really what, it forms the whole working of the body is said to be according to the way these airs are circulating. You relate it to Ayurveda, right? Air is one of the different, what is it? Yeah, Vata and Pitta, and the third one is, there's 3, Kapha. So if the air is out of order, this is why pranayama is very healthy, to control the air and do that. And that's why I was just listening to a lecture of Prabhupada, and he was describing how, because he lived in Allahabad for 13 years. And so he saw 2 of the big melas, because they're every 12 years, And he describes how he saw these yogis, they come down from the Himalayas for this, and hundreds of them. And he said, you would hear, oh, this one is 300 years old. This one is 700 years old. They said they look just like 20 years old, because they control, the air, slowing down. It says you have a certain number of breaths, so you slow down the breathing by pranayama, so you're going to, prolong the life. But the interesting thing was, I remember one time I read an account, I think it was in National Geographic, they did a special on the Kumbh Mela. Do you remember that, years ago? On the cover, they had one lady who had tattoos of Ram Nam all over her, not uncommon. And it said there was a big riot, because there's a certain astrological moment where it's most auspicious to bathe in that confluence of the 2 rivers, Yamuna and Ganges, and the subtle rivers, and the Saraswati. So that's a big point of prestige and everything. And there's hundreds of these yogis, they're different camps, different groups. And so they were fighting over getting in there at the exact time. There was a big rumble, I don't know if they were using their mystic powers or whatever, but that's why they have big contingents of soldiers there, army, to keep the peace, It's a whole city. 20, 30 million people gather. So the problem, they have roads, they have the telegrams, they have the postal, everything, So they also have fights. So this is a perfect sign. The devotees were there, but they're not so concerned about bathing at the right time to get liberation, because they know that by bhakti, you're already liberated. You already have that feeling of liberation, because you're less and less attached to the things of this world. That's where you're becoming liberated from. But they're there to distribute prasadam, distribute the holy name, and if possible, distribute books, and others to preach. And so, yeah, they bathe in the river whenever, if they could. But it just goes to show that all that power, that mystic power you develop, doesn't necessarily make you more of a bhakta. In fact, there's so many stories. Durvasa Muni, right, who had all these mystic powers, but he was very envious of Ambarish, an ordinary king who was getting so much honor. So he conspired, he figured out a way to try to dishonor him and try to kill him, actually, by the Kritya. Kritya is a female fiery demoness. And, the story, he was defeated. Ambarish just relied on Krishna, and the chakra came and chased Durvasa all the way to Vaikuntha, and he had to go back down and surrender to Ambarish. So we're not after those mystic powers, although sometimes I think these book distributors, they get some mystic powers. How could you go out and sell a huge set of books that no one even heard of before for $150 to an ordinary person in a Walmart parking lot? I mean, forget about living 700 years. That's a much more important service to do. So I don't know about these errors, but we can find out if you're really interested. You know exactly what each one does. But they're supporting the soul in there. Oh, we have another one. I'm sorry? It talks about the heirs? Oh, we're going backwards. Okay, go ahead. Turn on the mic.
Yeah, 16th verse, last paragraph purport.
Yeah.
It says, such emanations are experienced by superior and inferior natural sequences.
You want me to explain that?
Yeah, and before that there is a whole section about relationship between soul, super soul, and its part and parcel. So,
okay, one can understand the nature of the supreme by thorough study of oneself, the difference between the self as being the part and the whole. Vedanta Sutras as well. The Bhagavatam, the supreme has been accepted as the origin of all emanations. Such emanations are experienced by superior and inferior natural sequences. You know, if you really want to understand it, I'll try to investigate. It's a mystery. It's hard to understand. But I think that it's based probably on something in Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary, which I have a translation of that. So if you just remind me at the end of the kirtan, I'll try to look it up for you. And we'll figure that one out. Sometimes there are these mysteries that develop. All right, text 18. Andabandhi me deha nityasyokta sharirinaha anashino prameyasya tasmadyudyasva bharata. The material body of the indestructible, immeasurable, and eternal living entity is sure to come to an end. Therefore, fight, O descendant of Bharat. Purport. The material body is perishable by nature. It may perish immediately, or it may do so after 100 years. It is a question of time only. There is no chance of maintaining it indefinitely. But the spirit soul is so minute that it cannot even be seen by an enemy, to say nothing of being killed. As mentioned in the previous verse, it is so small that no one can have any idea how to measure its dimension. So from both viewpoints, there is no cause of lamentation, because the living entity, as he is, cannot be killed, nor can the material body be saved for any length of time or permanently protected. The minute particle of the whole spirit acquires this material body according to his work, and therefore observance of religious principles should be utilized. In the Vedanta Sutras, the living entity is qualified as light because he is part and parcel of the supreme light. As sunlight maintains the entire universe, so the light of the soul maintains this material body. As soon as the spirit soul is out of this material body, the body begins to decompose. Therefore, it is the spirit soul which maintains this body. The body itself is unimportant. Arjuna was advised to fight and not sacrifice the cause of religion for material bodily considerations. So this brings up this subject Prabhupada would often describe, the Shreyas and Preyas. Shreyas is ultimate good. You may recall that in Arjuna's surrender verse, text 7 of this chapter, Karpanya dosho pahata sabhava pricchamitvam dharma samudacheta, he's saying, because of my, he recognizes my miserly nature, you know, in other words, faulty, I've lost my intrinsic swadharma, which is to fight. Upahata swadharma has been taken away. Pritchami tvam dharma samudis, and I'm asking you because I'm bewildered about what the right thing is to do. In the Vedic culture, especially among the Aryans, dharma is essential. You want to know that you're doing the right thing. So he wasn't sure Dharma samuda cheta. My consciousness is bewildered about what real Dharma is. So tell me for certain. Yak shreya, here's the word shreya. Yak shreya ksya nishchitam bruhitan me. Tell me for certain how I can do the right thing, not only for myself, but for everyone else. Because he was obviously concerned about the fate of everyone, you know. That's why he was so disturbed. Shishyasteham shadimam tambam. Now I'm your disciple, the soul surrender, so please instruct me. But that word shreya comes up again and again. It's a central concept. And it's not really alien to us. When a child, you know, Prabhupada tells about himself, he didn't want to go to school the first day. You know, his mother had to drag him, you know. Actually, his father would pamper him. His mother was the strict one. And he would tell his father, I'll go tomorrow. I'll go tomorrow. And the mother, finally they have, you know, older men who'll take you there, you know, it's strict, you know. So, you know, and eventually, of course, he, you know, learned to read and he became a regular student. But, so that's an example of Shreyas and Prayas. Prayas is more or less more toward the animal side. What do I want to do now? How can I enjoy now? The heck with tomorrow. Or even, you know, a few hours from now. I'm not going to worry. It's just like, where can I enjoy? You know, that immediate. And that's the prayer side. And it's more or less like animalistic. Animals are like that. They don't worry about the future or the past. What, you know, where is there something to eat now? You know, so everything is. But human beings are meant to be concerned about the ultimate good, and to sacrifice. This is where austerity comes in. We just heard, I think this morning, from about Rishabdev's verse. You know, it constantly comes up. Nayam deho deha bhajang niloke, kashtan kamanante bhujangle. That as a human being, my dear sons, as human beings, you're not meant to work hard simply to enjoy this temporary happiness available to the hogs, stool-eating hogs. You know, he's using very heavy words to get their attention. Rather, perform austerity, which means foregoing the immediate pleasure for a future benefit, undergoing some voluntary pains, not for getting more power so you can conquer like Hiranyakashipu, but for purifying your existence. Sattvam shuddhyed. What does it say? Nayam de bang kashtan kam arate vidbujangni tapo devam putraga yena sattvam shuddhyed yasma brahmasaukyam sarantam. And what's the benefit of getting that purification? Then you become eligible to experience brahmasaukya, happiness that doesn't end. It says it right there, anantam, which is diametrically opposed to material happiness. We all know it's very flickering, you know. And in fact, what was it? Prahlad, I think, mentions it in one of his verses. How so much of material happiness is just anticipation, contemplation of it, planning of it, and visualizing it. Then when it actually happens, then it's in the rearview mirror. Then you can put on the video and look at how you enjoyed. You know, so your enjoyment is very flickering. I will enjoy. I have enjoyed. It's pathetic, really. But real happiness is this substantial enjoyment that's going on and on, that it doesn't end, which is inconceivable now. But that's what he says. So that's the Shreya. But we have to be trained. We have to train our mind and our senses to be eligible to experience that, so that we can actually perceive what. Right near the beginning, I think in this chapter, you'll find this verse in the purport. Atak Shri Krishna nama adi nabhaved grayam indriyai. That you cannot experience the real nature of Krishna's name, etc. Name, form, qualities, and pastimes. This is what defines any person. The name, the form, qualities, and what do they do, the pastime. With these senses that we have. Atak Shri Krishna namadi. Naman means name, etc. Atak Shri Krishna namadi nabhaved grayam indriya. They can't be grasped or understood with these senses, which includes the mind. So what are we to do? We take up the process of purifying the senses and mind so that we can perceive them. And it begins with which sense? The tongue. The tongue. What is it? Sevon muke, beginning the service, jihvado, with the jihva, Jihva is the tongue. And then etc. The tongue with chanting, ear with hearing, right tongue with tasting, like that. So, and then, swayameva sparatyada, Krishna will gradually reveal to you, according to your sincerity and purification, the real nature of the name, form, quality, his own name and form. So it's all ultimately a revelatory experience. Krishna takes the initiative. So we're simply trying to become eligible and worthy of being enlightened. And it's up to Krishna when that happens, and make it happen very quickly, whatever, according to our sincerity. So, this understanding that the body is perishable, and therefore that means we have a certain number of moments, hours, days, months, years left. We may not have so much. Therefore, the imperative of not wasting time is key. How to use our time to the best end, so that we're actually making progress. And that's what sadhana is all about. The sadhana means the practice according to the time-tested and true system that's been worked out. Why is the nectar of devotion so important? Because it gives us the means. It gives us very wise. At the beginning, he gives the benefits. Here's what you get. Liberation is the first one, then unlimited happiness. It's the only way to attract Krishna. It's rarely achieved. There's more. I should know them all by heart, but I forget. So that's right at the beginning, just like an advertisement, right? What's the key dynamic of an advertisement? As quickly as possible, implant in the observer's or listener's mind the desire for the product, right? So it's an art form, but basically means what's in it for me? Oh. I'll buy that car and I'll get the girl who's hanging on the car. Yeah. And then you forget about it. But the next time you have to buy a car, you don't even realize, I think I'll buy that Buick. Isn't it? It's demonic. But the principle is there. So Rupa Goswami, he gives, yes, you'll become liberated and get unlimited happiness. All right, where do I sign up? Because that's, everybody's trying to diminish his misery, his unhappiness, and maximize the happiness. Even the animals, they're doing that. As soon as one ant finds a little spilled honey, I don't know how they do it, but they communicate. Before you know it, you get a whole lineup, right? They've gone back to Godhead. They got some trees. But trying to do it in the material world is impossible. That's the thing. You can't. You can try, and because of your karma, you may succeed a little more than someone else. But there's no question of having unlimited happiness forever. Eventually, the whole delicate system of how you can enjoy breaks down. Either your body does, or the world does, or something else happens, and then you're in the state of anxiety and misery. And the more that you've committed yourself to that, invested in that, the more miserable you'll be. That's why Pingala, the lesson of Pingala, it's part of the Bhagavad Gita. She was a prostitute, and she had to do a business, so she went out and and she tried to, but no one would stop, And finally, she had this realization: I got to stop. That real bliss is giving up trying to do this. In other words, she came to the point of renunciation and vairagya. So she's used as a lesson. So that's what I mentioned. That Krishna mentioned at the end of this chapter. Where is there real peace? Vihaya kaman yaksarvan. By giving up the material desires, but you can't just give them up. You have to redirect them. So Krishna consciousness is really the path of peace. But peace is just the beginning. When that's like the Nishta platform, where you're determined and you're not so much bothered by the pull of the material energy, but it go on to Ruchi, Asakti, and Bhava, and Prema, and positive. We have an unlimited capacity for enjoyment because we're part and parcel of Krishna. If we tap into that reservoir of pleasure, you remember that little pamphlet? That's what we have that reservoir inside, but we're looking out. We're going out. We're not understanding to tap into that. So when we chant Hare Krishna, or we've had a wonderful festival, and that means we're tapping in a little bit to the pleasure inside. And the wonderful thing, it's always available. If you're carrying it around with you all the time, if you know how to access it, then you can always enjoy. Even when at the point of dying, you can be enjoying, because that's Krishna. He doesn't die, and you're being released from the painful body, and you're going back to Godhead. But it all depends on understanding ourselves as soul, as spirit souls. And that verse that Lord Chaitanya speaks, the answer to Sanatana Goswami, he doesn't go through all of this basic information. He says, Jivera, Swarupoy, Krishnera, Nityadas, Krishnera, Tatasta Shakti, Bheda, Bhed Prakash. If we understand that one verse and we live according to it, then we're well on our way. Jivera, Swarupoy, Krishnera, Nityadas. What's the meaning, Yes, yes. The Swarup. The Swarup. Our eternal form. Now we have this changing form. This is not our Swarup. Thank God. This. You want to be in that Swarup forever? No. Jiva Swarupa. We're eternal servants of Krishna. What that details are, what form it is, and all the rasas and the specific, that we're not aware, but it's there. And then Krishnera Tatasta Shakti. This part isn't quoted so much, but it's very important to understand. Who can tell me what that means? Krishnera Tatasta Shakti. This is part of our Swarup, who we are. What is the Tatasta Shakti? Marginal. Tata is the margin. So we're situated, sta, on the margin, Shakti. Meaning, as we've experienced, that we have the option to forget Krishna and go for the material energy. Big mistake, but that's it. So now we want to rectify that mistake by turning again toward Krishna, systematically according to the rules. And Bheda Bhed Prakash, we're also simultaneously, we and everything else, simultaneously one with and different from Krishna. So because we're one with Krishna, we have his qualities in minute degree, and one of them is Anandamaya, means being full of bliss. But we've lost it because we've identified with this material body, which is anything but full of bliss. And so living that verse, first of all, taking up the process of devotional service according to how it's been given specifically, then we become Krishna, Nitya Das. We become servants of Krishna. We're going to be Das, either a servant of Krishna or a servant of our senses, servant of our illusion, servant of our, mind. We're going to serve. That's how you can't give it up. But because we're human beings, we can have intelligence what we're going to serve and how to serve for our ultimate best interests. And that service needs to be directed to Krishna through the spiritual master, through the parampara. And everything becomes nicely situated. Okay, now I've completely lost time. Uh-oh, getting late. Any questions on what we spoke about?
Just one doubt, Prabhu.
Go ahead.
Hare Krishna. So, I think what happens to super soul when...
Is this on text 18?
No, just a question. It's related to 18, yeah.
Okay.
So, question is that a living soul moves to the next body or, depending on the work, but what happens to super soul when the soul leaves the body?
The soul, the super soul is always accompanying the soul. There's one super soul, expanded in infinite numbers. Just like Krishna's there, and the super soul is expansion of Krishna, but it's every atom and every heart. So he's always upadrishta anumantachar, described in the 13th chapter. He's overseeing and he's permitting us to act, and giving us knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness, that's described in the 15th chapter. So under the guidance of the super soul, the material energy works in such a way to give the soul exactly the body that he's due. In fact, it's described that when you leave one body, your next body is already ready. They already know. It may be in a different universe, but it's just exactly needed to fulfill your karma so you can go on. Now, if you have some assets in devotional service, and you can be born into a devotee family, much better than a yogi family or a millionaire's family. But Krishna said, "Don't worry," to Arjun. Arjun's worried, if I don't succeed, because he was very pessimistic in the sixth chapter that he could do the dhyana yoga. He says, Chanchalami mana Krishna, my mind is like a big hurricane, I can't control it. So Krishna said, yes, it's difficult, but you can succeed by practice. And I said, well, what if I fail? And be like a riven cloud. I've given up the material, I failed in the spiritual, then what? He says, don't worry. You'll be born in a Srimatam Gehe, in a wealthy family or a pious family. Or better yet, a yogi family, bhakti yogi family. So that's the encouragement. Nothing is lost. So from any position, we should strive as hard as we can, because once you're on the path, you can't lose. It's a win-win situation. The only question is how fast and how far we want to go, we're able to go in this lifetime. Prabhupada was very encouraging. He said, you should go back to God in one lifetime. But we've seen it's not so easy. but it's possible. And even if we don't, millions and millions and millions of births we've had, so many in this material world. So, okay, we try as hard as we can. We have some material desires. 1 or 2 more births, 5 more births. What's that compared to all the millions? So it's very auspicious. And the more that we are strict with ourselves and try to give it to others, the more mercy we'll get from Krishna, Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, and get purified. Well, we've come to the end of our hour, whatever it is. Okay. Let's see. I'll just give you one little poem. It's something sweet. Okay. Madhura Madhura Metan Mangalam Mangalanam Sakala Nigama Valli Satpalam Chit Swarupam Sakadabipati Geetam Shraddhaya Helayava and Bhagavadanana Matram Tadihet Krishna Nama. Of sweet things, it's the sweetest you will taste at any time. Of things that bring good fortune, it's the perfect paradigm. Of things, of all the Vedic writings, it's the transcendental fruit, the very form of spirit, unalloyed and absolute. When uttered even once with faith, or uttered once with none, from birth and death it surely will deliver anyone. And in the end, it brings pure love for Krishna, life's true aim. So cast away all doubts and chant Shri Krishna's holy name. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.